out at E3. My name is Rich Klein, and this is Austin Stobaugh with Carbon Off-Road and the Off-Road Driving School. And we're going to talk to you about the basics of finding your line. Now here at Sand Hollow and anywhere else out on the trails, you're just trying to make sure you get through the trail. Sometimes you're with friends, sometimes you're by yourself, even though we don't recommend it, but you always have to find your line and get your way through the trail, and that's kind of what makes this all fun. Here's our subject matter expert right here. So what do you think about finding your line, and what's kind of the basics about that?
I mean, the basics for finding your line, some of the easiest things that we always recommend to start off with is, if you've never been on a trail or you've never done an obstacle before, look for some of those indications that, kind of show you where the main line might be. So that is tire marks, some black marks on those rocks, maybe some scratches from vehicles before you. That gives you a good indication of where to start and where to look for that line. And usually somewhere around there will be the best starting point. If you don't have those, it gets a little bit trickier, and we'll talk about that. That's usually the easiest way to find where to start off.
Sure. Now for me, when I'm looking at the trail itself, generally speaking, it's anywhere between 10 and 20 feet wide, and you want to make sure you stay on the trail. Yep. Regardless of how difficult it is to get off over the obstacle or through this section, you need to make sure you stay on the trail, and it's very key to keeping these trails open. However, you're in the middle of the trail, and now you're finding yourself at an obstacle, and like you said, looking for tire marks, looking for scratch marks, anything that's an indicator of how the vehicle is going to go through. But then at that point, you have to build a plan, right?
Yep.
So what's one of the first things you do when you're going to build a plan? What do you think about?
I always look for what would be what I call the smoothest line. So I look for rocks or either holes to avoid or rocks that I want to try and make sure my tires get planted on. What I'm looking for is trying to keep the vehicle as stable as possible. All four tires on the ground, so I have good traction and I'm not picking up a tire or getting in a bad situation. And that goes for beginners to experts. I mean, ideally, there are some trails where maybe you do have to pick up a tire, but what we're talking about today is definitely going to be what's the safest and best route for most people. And I think that's going to be trying to make sure all four tires stay on the ground planted and have good traction, make sure everyone stays comfortable, and you're not putting yourself in those precarious situations.
Yeah, I would agree. When I'm driving the trail personally, I want to make sure that I can also see the obstacles ahead of time, and I can map out according to my wheelbase.
Right.
And sometimes even for the earlier guys or earlier people in the sport, you want to maybe even bring a tape measure. Measure your wheelbase, see where you fit through certain obstacles, and try to aim for those obstacles. And you kind of get used to doing that at the beginning by maybe you put some mats on the ground in a parking lot and understand where your vehicle fits between the mats. And you just kind of use simple obstacles, maybe they're cones, maybe they're water bottles, anything to kind of weave in and out of what would be pseudo obstacles in a parking lot, give you an idea of the spatial awareness of your vehicle. Then you can take that onto the trail, and you end up mastering it pretty quickly. Yeah,
one thing we talk about a lot in our 101 classes is, the repetitive nature of kind of how most people started parallel parking. You might have used trash cans and tried to parallel park between those. We do the same kind of thing. We put out some cones or some water bottles and make sure the customers or the 101 people, make sure you hit your tires on those marks and get a feel for where your tires are compared to where you're sitting. And that's going to help a ton when you're out in the obstacles. Knowing where those tires are and making sure you can get them to go where you are envisioning they're going to go, it's going to help you a lot.
And you might feel a little silly doing it in a parking lot, like you just got into driver's ed. But I'll tell you, when you get out on the trail, it really makes a difference.
Yeah, you don't look like the beginner on the obstacle when you have that experience behind you. If you know where your tires are, I promise you, those guys are the ones that get through there a lot easier and unscathed. And you see a guy that might have a little more confidence, but doesn't know where his vehicle is or the capabilities, he's going to be the one that struggles, and you might be the one that walks right through it.
Another thing to think about is, while you're finding your line and you're driving that line, is visualizing where all the little obstacles and obstructions are in the trail. A lot of times when you're sitting in the driver's seat, there's an obstruction and you can't actually see the trail because of your hood's in the way, or maybe there's an obstacle behind a tree or on the other side of a rock. And so you really want to make sure that you remember what is there and try to visualize that as you're driving and time your vehicle through the trail to hit certain marks in your mind.
Right. Yep. Yeah, if you can visualize where those rocks are, if you've walked the obstacle ahead of time and you can see where you want to put the vehicle, you need to kind of remember where that is on the trail and do your best to implement that in the driver's seat. That way, like you said, you stay on that best line. Once you get in the driver's seat, it can look very different than when you walked it.
Another thing that also comes up a lot is, say you fall off your line. Now you're kind of flustered because you're starting to back up. You start to remember or lose memory of where rocks are, where obstructions are. It's okay to just stop, get out, and take a look.
Yep.
Right? If you are not comfortable or something's not going exactly as what you scripted in your mind, just put the vehicle in park and take a look.
Yep. It doesn't hurt to reassess or back completely off and start again.
Yep. And finally, at the end of all this, there is no replacement for seat time, and that
Right.
is you behind the wheel, enjoying yourself on the trail, all the obstacles, all the hours you put in on the trail, all the trails that you get knocked off your list, your bucket list, or whatever. The more time you spend on the trail, the better off you are. You're going to get all that experience just multiplying,
Yep.
and at the end of the day, you're going to be knocking down those obstacles just like the pros do.
Well, we kind of went over, how to find your line, what we would call the basics to finding your line, or what we would call line choices, because sometimes obstacles have more than one.
Yep.
So since we kind of gone over it, let's probably go implement it and show them how to do it.
All right, let's hit the rocks.
Awesome.
All right, so now we're here at the obstacle itself. And there's a couple indications right here, and it helps that there was just an event here. So we can see a lot of different marks here.
Yep.
But sometimes these marks might be washed off the rock through wind or sand or rain,
Yep.
right? And so, but we're here at the obstacle, and what are you looking at?
What I'm looking at is tire marks to begin with. There are some here, so we can use those as the beginning telltale signs. Lots of dark tire marks right here in the middle. Obviously not a ton outside of about here, and none real high up on that wall at the beginning. So that gives me an idea that, right up in here, straightforward, somewhere up in the middle.
And eventually it kind of funnels to one location, right?
Right.
So we're really wide at the base of this. And once we start getting into the obstacle, there's really no tire marks up there.
No, it narrows right into that V-notch, which is going to tell you it's going to either have you go inside that V-notch or some way to straddle it.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so for me, as I'm looking at this obstacle, I see at the base here a little ledge that my rear tires are going to get caught up on.
Right.
At the same time, due to my wheelbase,
Yep.
that my fronts are going to be climbing.
Absolutely.
Now that's always that always makes it difficult. And
Right.
So
For four-wheel
four
lifting.
wheels trying to lift, 4,000 pounds up these rocks.
Yep.
It's a lot to ask.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of times what we'll do is try to just drop one tire in versus the other. And I understand that this is a very extreme version of what introduction or the basics to line choice is.
Right.
But all these principles kind of just match.
Right.
They're congruent all the way through.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So we want to make sure that not all four tires are trying to climb a wall at the same time.
Yes.
So in this situation, I've got a vertical wall for my front tires. I've got a vertical wall on the passenger side and kind of what I call a leaning wall or a gentle incline on the driver's side. So we're going to use that to our advantage because at the end of the day, the vehicle wants to promote, or the obstacle here wants to promote the vehicle falling in this crack. And that's really not something we want to do. When we get into that position, tires aren't kind of all climbing simultaneously.
Right.
And you'll end up rolling over, tipping over, lifting a tire,
Right.
having a bad day.
Yep. And
So
kind of like what you mentioned is this is a more advanced obstacle, but the tips and techniques expand up and down. So
And they're all the
beginning,
same.
the beginning techniques are the same as they are advanced. And the same concept goes, we talked about trying to make sure all four tires have contact to the ground. You're trying not to lift a tire ideally. And so that's what we're going to do here is, like you said, I try not to drop a tire in.
Sure.
And keep traction on all four tires ideally.
So what I see here is it's kind of a confusing point. We want all four tires to climb, but we can't get all four tires to climb because the vehicle is just not capable of that.
Right.
So what we do is we actually get one tire a little higher and we wedge a tire on the inside of this rock here. Now that allows one tire to be free and on top of the rock. This tire to actually be free a little bit and grab the sidewall, the side lugs of the tire, grab the rock. And then that will actually lift your rear tires up this 2-foot bottom ledge. Okay. So once your rear tires start to climb, you want to make sure your tires you start to level the vehicle out.
Right.
So you'll turn back up onto this rock. Now, this incline here is probably a total of 10 feet that we're standing on.
Right.
But it doesn't matter if it's on flat ground. It's all the same
Right.
concept, right? So once the rears have started climbing, then you could level out the front, and then that's when all four tires are essentially climbing at the same time.
Right.
If you fall in one way or the other with tires, then you want to look at that as an indication that you're on the wrong line.
Right.
And maybe back out of the obstacle itself.
Yep.
So what I like to do in this is always get your tire on the high side, the vertical wall first.
Okay.
Because if you wedge that tire in here, your driver's side tire will be up on this wall. Your passenger side tire, the contact patch will be down here where the black marks are.
Right.
And the top of the tire will be here. And you have contact on two parts of the tire, which actually, in the world of rock crawling or trail riding, you'll break an axle.
Right.
So that's a lot of friction there against your drivetrain. You want to make sure that this tire gets higher before you proceed.
Right.
So I use this little ledge here and start getting the tire to climb up a little bit easier.
Gotcha.
And you can kind of see in the rock a little bit of a line which you'll use to get up there.
Right.
And those are just indicators.
Yeah.
Again.
Indicator marks are these white scratches, which is from people before you have scratched going up that same line you're talking about.
Sure. Well, once you get your tires up, you're going to pull forward and it's going to feel really good. And then eventually your rear tire starts to climb this wall here. Your other tire can't climb this wall. And it's because of vertical wall.
Right, right.
Now, if your tire does not climb this wall, essentially what's going to happen is you're going to continue to move forward. Your driver's side tire will lift up in the air, and you got a chance at rolling over, doing body damage.
Yep.
All of us want to refrain from that. So the trick to that is trying to get this tire to climb. Right?
Gotcha.
Your passenger side rear tire. So the only way you're going to get your passenger side rear tire to climb is actually to turn the direction that your passenger side tire is on.
Right.
So
basically apply more pressure to it.
Apply more pressure.
Got it.
You're going to come up here with your front end, and as soon as your rear end starts to hit this wall, you're going to turn passenger. And you can kind of see that again on the rocks.
Right.
You see all the tire marks are over there now.
Right.
And not so much over here.
Yep.
So you're going to turn back this way. That's going to force this tire to climb the wall. And as soon as it starts climbing the wall, you can bring it back, straighten it out, and move on your way.
Gotcha. Sounds like a good line. I like it.
Probably try to put it to use.
It all according to the indicators and what's here, and I'm sure you've done it before, but it does look like the proper line.
There's also some lines out here, there's some indicators that are maybe not so proper, right? We saw tire marks way over here. In fact, here's some tire marks right here.
Yep.
Right? Having your tire that far over means that your other front tire is down inside this hole.
Right.
You're not going anywhere.
Right.
You're going to end up rolling over this way.
Yep.
So the idea, again, is to try to keep the vehicle as level as possible.
Yes.
You can see indicators, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to be over there, right?
Right.
Stay centered in the obstacle. Try to keep the body of your vehicle as level as possible, and try to feel where the rear axle is. If it's not climbing, do something to make it climb.
Gotcha.
Combat that. With vehicles and in life, everything moves in the path of least resistance. So if a tire is not going to climb this, your vehicle is going to start moving in the path of least resistance. It's going to start lifting tires.
Right.
You've got to use leverage, the mechanical leverage of the vehicle itself, to combat that. And that's the way we apply pressure here.
Yep.
By turning to the passenger side and getting that tire to climb. As soon as it climbs, turn back driver, pull forward.
Gotcha.
Let's try it.
Yeah, it's a little windy, so I'll get up there, and if you need a spot, just holler, but it sounds like you have a line in your head that you're going to try and hit, and if you fall off or whatever, I'll be there to help you.
Yep.
If not, I'll just be there to watch.
All right,
okay, awesome.
Welcome back, E3. Now we just finished that obstacle on the Fallen Trail here at Sand Hollow. And every time you're in an obstacle, that spatial awareness is super important. And understanding that you're on the line or when you're not on the line, and not continuing to drive through a poor line choice and resulting in a rollover or body damage. So you finish the obstacle. What are some of the things that you take home, maybe to the next obstacle?
The biggest things that I always like to tell the one-on-one customers and for myself is I like to take away the visual aspect of an obstacle or how hard an obstacle was. And again, this goes from beginner all the way up to advanced. If you conquer an obstacle that you feel is technical or hard for yourself, you feel like you've accomplished something. And you can take that to the next one and say, okay, this next one looks easier, or maybe it is easier. And you feel more confident, I've just done something harder, I definitely can do this. And then the next time you get on a different trail and you see another hard obstacle or something similar, you go, okay, I'm confident, I know I can do this. And it gives you that boost that says, hey, I've done some hard stuff before, and I know I can do something similar. And to me, that's helpful for especially the one-on-one or the beginners as they start to, rack up those obstacles that they've completed under their belt. They get more confident and they feel like they can go a little bit further each time.
And that's a good point. When we go wheeling, typically it's just like if you were to do any sport. You want to play with or against people that are better than you,
right?
So that at the end of the day, you're able to be, more capable or a better driver. And so going out with people that have a little bit better vehicles, it gives you an understanding of what you should do, what kind of upgrades you should have. Going out with people who are better drivers, maybe on a little harder trail, that will help get your confidence up,
right,
and give you an idea of where you sit, right?
Right.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And getting that confidence is huge in this sport.
Yes.
So I know that when I approach an obstacle, I want to, even if it's the very first time that I've done it, I want to look as smooth and accurate through that obstacle as possible so people look at me and go, that's somebody who knows what they're doing. That's a good driver.
Right.
Well, even if I've done it the 100th time, I want it to be smooth. I've got all my controls. I know exactly my line choice, and I'm going to execute it exactly the way I want. And the whole purpose of that, again, is to just look like I know what I'm doing, and therefore act like I know what I'm doing.
Right.
And hopefully one day you will know what you do. All right, now we just got to take all that experience we just had on the obstacle and go put it to use out on the trail.
Yep.
It's all about seat time, and that's just what it comes down to. You've got to get as much seat time as possible so you can feel your vehicle and get through the trail just like anybody else. Got anything to add?
Just make sure you're comfortable, have a good time. Like I said, go out with people that you enjoy going out with, and just be safe. Everyone needs to just make sure that they take their time, enjoy what they're doing, and have a good time out here, and you'll have years to come of enjoyment out here.
Right on. Thanks, E3, for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.